Today on SEBA On Demand, we talk with Deputy Sheriff Frank Harris about his commitment to the community and bridging the gap between law enforcement and the people we serve. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I think what caught our attention was a video that you posted on your social media of you out on the protest line.
Up, huh, nigga? You fired up, huh? Yeah, you fired up, huh? Yeah, I see you, okay.
Take
This
us
nigga
both
think you're
out.
hard as shit, huh?
Take us both out.
I'm right here waiting for you, nigga. I'm right here waiting for you. I want you to touch me. I want you to touch me, nigga. This nigga think he real smooth. Yeah, go ahead and nod your head. Yeah, you ready. You real ready. Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, Officer Harris, remember you ain't shit and you're another nigger on the street.
Exactly. You take that uniform off and that badge, you still a black man. They gonna look at you the same. This nigga.
This is sad.
Sad as shit. You think you hard
You
as
think
shit.
mommy's proud? Mommy raised a bitch and she
This
disowned her
nigga
ass
bullshit.
real quick.
This nigga
Get some Carmex.
bullshit.
I'm tired of seeing you lick your lips.
Yeah, get some Carmax, dusty ass nigga. Let me go get on your homie.
Tell us a little bit about what was happening in that moment and how you felt.
The video was a protest that was happening in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. It was probably approximately 300 people out there, and it had become disruptive. People were throwing items at cars and jumping on type of vehicles. They were jumping on a school bus and blocking traffic. And so we had went there as the mobile field force to just kind of prevent further damage to, businesses or to like vehicles and stuff like that. And that's when we were kind of approached by the crowd.
I saw some footage from that same protest, and I think what stuck out at me was that the insults that were being hurled at our deputies of color seemed to be the worst. Words, I was taught never to say in my life. How did that feel?
At the time in the moment, I'm working, got my professional face on and stuff like that. And so initially it didn't really faze me too much. To be honest, in my career, being a black officer, I get insults like that all the time. It's actually pretty normal. So at the time, it didn't really affect me right then and there. But like going back and seeing the video and watching it sending it to some friends and family, that's when it really kind of hit me, and it just really made me sad. Because I had gotten into law enforcement because I believed that there was a lack in diversity, and I kind of wanted to be out there in law enforcement to, be, a voice or a helping hand to, young black males when I see them out there in the field.
You and I spoke a little bit before this, and one of the things that you said that resonated with me was you said, aren't I one of the reasons you're out here? Your life, right? Talk to me a little bit about that irony for you.
The protesters were out there because, social injustice and inequality and stuff like that, which, I'm all for that, for, getting, diversity in law enforcement, bridging the gap with the community. And that's one of the reasons that, I felt compelled to get into law enforcement, so just kind of seeing them draw that line, but then attack me with the same insults, it's like, I'm out here, they were saying they're out there for me. It's like, well, I'm here wearing this uniform for you.
Right.
So when, you go out and talk to someone, you could see someone that maybe you could resonate with or feel comfortable with. And, I understand your culture, what you're going through, and we could talk, and so that was just kind of just the irony that just kind of got to me, that you're going to attack me basically for my race and for my profession that I had chosen to do.
There's so much in that. One is the recruiting and the hiring of diverse police forces, sheriff's departments, getting people that look like the communities they serve. I know that when I was on the department, that was just a huge focus of our talks and interactions with the community. Do you worry that this time we're living in right now will affect that moving forward?
I don't. I feel with people coming out and speaking, specifically people of color in law enforcement, that it'll resonate with people who maybe are on the fence against law enforcement, or maybe, they want to become an officer one day. They'll kind of just get that kick in their brain that like, hey, like, maybe I could be the change. Maybe I could, help or provide or give whatever I can, and so I've just seen that since I've short 8 years in the sheriff's department of just how diverse the department has become. So I don't think that at all.
I know you talked about bridging that gap and you being that voice or that face, even, just upon first contact, that maybe somebody would feel more comfortable with because they can relate to you. What do you feel is your responsibility in this moment in history to help bridge that gap, or do you feel a responsibility?
I do feel a responsibility, and my responsibility, I feel, is just to let people know, one, what it's like for me being black male as a law enforcement, and then also just things that I could do, just go and just talking to people, my confrontations with, speaking with people out in the field, and just going to them and speaking to them, making them feel comfortable speaking with law enforcement.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you said you wanted to be that diverse space, or you wanted to make a difference from the profession. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So my background in my family, there were no law enforcement people or people involved in law enforcement growing up. I was abandoned by my mother at birth, who was addicted to crack cocaine for 15 years, but she's clean now. And my father, unfortunately, wasn't able to take on the responsibility of not only being a parent, but being a single parent. And so I was adopted by my grandmother and my dad's sister and lived with them majority of my life. And in my family, a lot of them were involved in gangs or sales of drugs, prostitution, and different criminal acts. And so growing up, there was always a negative portrayal of law enforcement in the family. And it kind of took me growing older and into my teenage years to kind of see why they felt that way towards law enforcement. But I got more interest in law enforcement, one, because I just didn't want to be a part of that criminal lifestyle that a lot of my family members were involved in. And some of my family members, one of my family members who was incarcerated, he's been incarcerated since he was 18 for over 20 years now. And he had, didn't want me to go down the path that he went down. And he was telling me, hey, you need to be better, and he told me to think about becoming a police officer.
What an unlikely place to get that push, right?
Yeah. And then when me and my grandmother moved to Hemet, I had attended Hemet Family Baptist Church, and one of my Sunday school leaders, Jeff Penny, he was a lieutenant for Hemet Police Department, and he really was a huge influence, not only for me, but several of my friends. And he was a huge part of, helping young black males, whether get to the next level in their football careers or stuff like that, or getting them introduced into law enforcement. And after Jeff had passed away, my next Sunday school leader, Ralph Victorio, he to this day has been a huge influence for me. He took me on a ride-along that I'll never forget. And after that day, I said, I don't want to go any more ride-alongs. I don't want to know anything else. This is what I want to do. I want to be a deputy sheriff.
With this time that we're going through, with the increased scrutiny on law enforcement, with the increased awareness that we all have on how we're supposed to treat people, have you found any fallout with family or friends? Has any of that affected your personal life?
It has. Unfortunately, with social media, a lot of people put their feelings out there and stuff like that. And even to the beginning, when I first became deputy sheriff, I had lost a lot of friend relationships and even family relationships. And with the recent events, people, posting about their, feelings towards law enforcement, it has affected it. And for the most part, I've tried to, listen to their hurt and their feelings. But at the same time, explain to them that, officers don't go out there, wanting to kill black people. A lot of stuff the media portrays, it's not like that. The job is not what a lot of people make it out to be, and so I'll just kind of explain to them, certain situations of why what happened and how an officer usually their mindset going into certain situations. And you haven't seen law enforcement agencies try and defend, the acts of the officer in Minneapolis, and a lot of agencies, which is unusual for them to speak of other agencies' investigations. But law enforcement agencies have came out and said it was a criminal act and it was wrong, which it was. And so people who have tried to draw that line between black people, the black community, and law enforcement, it's kind of wrong, because there is no line. We're all on the same side in what happened, and we just need to just kind of just talk about it, make sure that it doesn't happen here, and just grow together as a community.
None of us thought this was okay. It seemed like this could have been the event where we all came together, and yet it's still exploded. And I don't say that to take away from the emotions or anything. I can't even imagine, but it just seemed like we were all on the same page. So for it to be so divisive or so divided right now, it just seems so sad, really. What can we do better as a profession? What do you think we can do better as a profession?
Just some things that I feel kind of just passionate about is just, I feel that law enforcement as a whole, is what I've seen, at least in Southern California and in my experience, that it's moving more towards de-escalation, and communication. I know with the Sheriff's Department, we have to do our tactical communication training all the time, but just more community outreach, community policing, it's proven to work so that, people could not just see us on, YouTube or, World Star in like a, lethal force encounter, or, we're cops fighting, but they actually see our face and actually talk to us and get to know us.
So there's this movement, right, to like dismantle or defund. Basically, they're trying to take policing out of the fabric of society, it seems like. What kind of, from your background and also from your professional, experience, what kind of a consequence would that have on communities?
Oh, it'd be terrible. I mean, if anything, you need to fund law enforcement more for the trainings, for, community projects and stuff like that. But defunding it, it's only going to just unfortunately hurt people in the black community and poor communities as a whole, because now you're making response times that much worse, not being available to resources. And unfortunately, people fall victimized to a lot of just gangs and just violence that'll just increase and just run rapid throughout, communities that need law enforcement presence.
Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
For just the protesters, and just for people as a whole, that, don't be one-sided, just for all of us to just listen to one another. We're not going to all agree, but you should still, as a human being, just listen to each other and their feelings and stuff like that. And whether we have to agree to disagree, or if we could just kind of just come to some type of rationale together to just grow and just be better, there doesn't need to be sides. There's only one side, and that we just need to just listen to one another and just grow together.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.